Last time, we covered the 4 parables Jesus told about how the kingdom grows: the sower, the wheat and the weeds, the mustard seed and the yeast. Same afternoon, same shoreline, same opening phrase, repeated 7 times total. This time, we finish the set. The last 3 parables from that chapter don't describe growth at all. They describe what the kingdom is worth and how it ends. Start with the treasure. A man is working a field, probably not his own, likely hired labor or a tenant farmer, and his hand or his plow strikes something buried. He digs and finds treasure. Then, Matthew says, in his joy, he goes and sells everything he owns and buys that field. That detail about ownership isn't incidental. Under the legal reasoning preserved later in Jewish law, specifically in the Mishnah's tractate on found property, treasure discovered on land you don't own belongs to the landowner, not the finder. The man in the parable can't simply take the treasure and walk away. His only legal path to it is buying the entire field, which is exactly what he does, and exactly why the joy in the text matters so much. This isn't a grim transaction. He sells everything he has, and Matthew's word choice makes clear he does it gladly. Here's what most people miss about this one. The man isn't looking for anything when he finds the treasure. He's just working. The kingdom in this image isn't the reward for a deliberate search. It's something that interrupts an ordinary day and reorders every priority the moment it's found. The second parable takes the opposite approach on purpose. A merchant is actively searching for fine pearls. This is his trade. His entire professional life is built around evaluating them. And when he finds one flawless pearl, he does the exact same thing the field worker did. Sells everything. Buys it. Stay with the contrast for a second, because it's the entire point of pairing these two. The treasure finds the man. The pearl is found by a man who has spent his life looking. Some people come to the kingdom the way you'd trip over something in a field you weren't paying attention to. Others come to it the way a professional evaluator arrives at the one purchase that makes every other transaction in his career look small by comparison. The parable doesn't rank one path above the other. It simply insists both are real. In the first-century Mediterranean world, a flawless pearl wasn't a modest luxury. Pearls sourced through Red Sea and Persian Gulf trade routes could be worth a fortune large enough to liquidate an estate for. And Pliny the Elder, writing decades after Jesus, describes Roman buyers paying sums equivalent to a general's plunder for a single exceptional pearl. A first-century audience would have heard "sold everything he had" and understood immediately that this wasn't hyperbole. It was the literal, ordinary cost of owning something in that category. The 7th and final parable changes the image entirely. A dragnet is thrown into the sea and gathers up fish of every kind without discriminating. It can't sort while it's underwater. Only once it's full and dragged onto the beach do the fishermen sit down and separate what's good from what's worthless, keeping one, throwing back the other. And here Jesus does something he does with only one other parable in the entire set. He explains this one directly, in plain terms, no parable left to decode. The net is the present age itself. The good and the bad are gathered together, side by side, indistinguishable, while the net is still in the water. The separation happens only at the end, and angels, not the fish themselves, do the sorting. Pay attention to this, because it's a direct callback to the wheat and the weeds from last time. Same claim, different image. growing side by side now, sorted later, not by the ones growing, but by someone else at a time they don't control. Two parables, two completely different pictures, one identical theological claim repeated for emphasis rather than variety. After the net, Matthew records something easy to skip past. Jesus turns to the disciples and asks a direct question. Have you understood all these things? And they answer yes. It's a small moment, but it's the only point in the entire chapter where the listeners are asked to confirm comprehension out loud, not asked to feel something, not asked to believe something, asked whether they understood. That question is doing real work. A parable that isn't understood is just a nice story about farming and fishing. Jesus' own explanations of the sower and now the net exist because understanding was never optional in his teaching method. The concealment was for the crowd standing at a distance. For the 12 sitting close, the expectation was always full comprehension, confirmed out loud. Origen, writing in the 3rd century, returned to the treasure and the pearl specifically because he saw in the pairing an answer to a question every generation of readers eventually asks. Does the kingdom cost something, or is it free? His answer, drawn from the text itself, was both at once freely given to the one who finds it, and yet costing the finder everything he owns to actually take hold of it. Grace and total surrender were never presented as competing claims in these two parables. They were presented as the same transaction, described from two different angles. 7 parables, one afternoon, one repeated phrase, and together they refuse to let the kingdom sit still as a single idea. It grows quietly like a seed and a spreading yeast. It's worth everything you have, whether you stumbled onto it or spent your life searching for it. And it ends not in the ambiguity people prefer to imagine, but in an actual separation, at an actual time, by someone other than the ones being separated. Which of these two, the treasure that found the man, or the pearl the man spent his life searching for, describes your own story better? Tell me in the comments. And if you missed the first half of this chapter, the sower, the weeds, the mustard seed, and the yeast, that video is linked for you right now.